Thanks to Cisco for sponsoring our day of podcasting at KubeCon. We had some great conversations. Thanks again to Cisco. You can learn more about Cisco and their microservices platform at mantle.io. That's MANTL.io.
Hi, this is Lee Calcote with the New Stack. I'm here at Cloud Native Con / KubeCon in Seattle, Washington, sunny Seattle, Washington. I'm joined today by Idit Levine of CTO at EMC. Welcome, Idit.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's good to. So we've chatted before. It's good to catch up with you again. I think I guess you didn't take your lesson from the last time that I tried to hammer you with questions.
No, I'm still here.
That was out at Cloud Foundry, right?
Yeah.
Dr. Nick was with us. Turns out Dr. Nick had a lot more questions than I did. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he's got a great personality, great guy. But kind of part of the theme today at Cloud Native Con, KubeCon is Kubernetes.
Right.
I know we talked about the open source project that you lead and drive, Unique, which is, if I can kind of butcher that, it's maybe to put it shortly, sort of it's sort of the same kind of packaging that and portability that Docker provides for containers. It's kind of Unique is bringing for Unikernels.
Exactly.
Is that about how you would put it? Okay.
Yeah, exactly what Docker is doing for container, we're trying to do for Unikernel. Of course, there is a little bit different because in Unikernel, it's a VM, so you're basically involved in actually compiled drivers and so on, so you need to know a little bit more where you're actually running. So it's a little bit different than that aspect, but basically it's to make that easy to run. So It's exactly, it's easy API to use.
So if we follow that analogy down the rabbit hole a little bit further, so containers are, anymore, bring a fair bit of security to the table. They're portable, they're small in footprint, and Unikernels kind of take that, each of those aspects a little bit of a step further. Is that right?
So I will argue that container is not that secure, and I think that what Unikernel is trying to attack is exactly that. I think it's a different approach of trying to wrap the same application, but it's trimming it a little bit more, so it's much more stream. The performance will be much better because there's not a lot of layer. It's basically getting rid of the layer of the guest OS, and in terms of security, the surface of attack is much smaller, so it's really, really secure. So it's much more secure.
So trimming the fat a little bit. So it's a lean project. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. Nice. Well, speaking of security and just how Unikernels kind of reduce that attack surface. We as an industry had sort of an upset late last week around some of our favorite websites being down.
Right.
With that example in mind, do Unikernels kind of help change that story, or to the extent that those were used? Or?
Yeah, so actually, funny enough, I just wrote a blog with my colleague Yuval, and we just basically addressed exactly that problem. So we analyzed what happened on that Friday, and we're trying to understand what will happen if those devices, the bot of the network, the botnet, basically will be running Unikernel if that attack will be still possible. And basically in the article what we're doing, we go over all the popular exposit way, like here's shell injection or directory traverse and so on, and we're basically trying to understand what will happen if Unikernel will be running there. And in the end of the blog, what we're saying is that basically it's not possible, right? I mean, if Unikernel will run, this attack will not be possible.
I see. And you mentioned a couple of specific examples where Unikernels are helping that. So directory traversal kind of being one. This notion that Unikernels like application containers, are meant, to perform or intended to perform sort of a singular process. And to the extent that that's happening, some folks will open up SSH and include that as a process inside their container,
right.
not necessarily an intended recommended practice. Is that the same line of thinking with unikernels, or?
Yeah, so the beauty of unikernel is that you're running only one process. If you're running one process, you cannot, you cannot use something like SSH or to run some other binary. You're running only the binary that's running in your unikernel. So even if one can somehow manage to go to the unikernel, it doesn't have a shell to use, so it will not be able to execute any shell script, and it can't actually also execute any new processes, because again, it's not going to work. It's just going to error out. So the beauty of it is that you cannot actually run a dangerous extra binary, which is great, because that's kind of like make sure that will not be able to run the dangerous script. So it's great.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, we may need to coin a new term here. Just I've made the mistake of speaking on the topic a couple of times and not well articulating kind of the difference between an infrastructure container or like a system container versus an application container. And kind of now we're taking it another step further. But I'm going to attempt that now and see if this resonates with you. It just, there are infrastructure containers, kind of system containers that are essentially like a lifted and shifted VM, kind of an entire operating system with, it's intended to manage and run multiple processes. If you're using application containers, ideally kind of one process, and then, as you just articulated, kind of moving into unikernels, would you say the same thing? Just a singular process?
Yeah. All the beauty of unikernel is the reason we can actually stream a lot of the operating system component is because we basically decided a decision, and the decision is that we can run only one process. If we can run only one process on one user, so actually all the terms of like permission check or rings are not relevant, because there's nothing to protect of. You are the only one who's running, and so it's kind of like safe. Yeah. In that terms, basically, it's more secure than container, because in container, for instance, in the application container, you still can run more than one processes. You can trick it or somehow. You cannot do that in container, which make it very, very safe. In unikernel, which make it very, very safe.
Yeah, very interesting. So we are here at KubeCon,
right.
Which is all about Kubernetes, and there is just I understand you guys have announcements kind of in that space.
Yeah. So when we look at the ecosystem, we try to understand how people are using today in application. What are the tools that you're using? And Kubernetes is the most popular one right now, cloud native app, and cluster management. And therefore, we say, well, Unique is great, and it can create you the unikernel. This will be very, very good. But the problem is that there is a lot of benefit that Kubernetes can put on top of it, like, for instance, the states and the ability of define how many instances you want, and it's always going to be the number, and the networking and so on. So we said, instead of reinvent the wheel and actually do it ourselves, what we decided is basically integrate it with Kubernetes. So it's kind of like there is quite a cool thing with this, because basically what we did, we make the ability that you'll be able to run container in Kubernetes side by side by unikernel. And the beauty with unikernel is that unikernel is basically real kind of like on demand, because when you're using Kubernetes, you basically have the nodes below the container. So if you want to actually scale, you have a lot of container and you want to scale, if you need more node, you actually need to spin up another machine. With unikernel, it's basically on demand. You don't need to take care of the lower level, right? Because it's on demand. If you want another application, it's basically a VM. So it's directly on the hypervisor or whatever you run it, and therefore it shouldn't be any problem. So we integrated with it. Basically you can continue running pod and replicas and so on. Your regular application, you just need to decide if you want to put it in container or in the unikernel. And again, it's use case based, right? If your application needs security, probably will go with unikernel.
It makes a lot of sense. So just for the geeks at heart out there, like myself, more about the specifics of the integration with Kubernetes. So Kubernetes, historically has been able to run Docker as a runtime engine, and then Rocket support has been kind of added in there. And is it right for folks to think of kind of Unikernels as being another kind of runtime engine?
So we actually done exactly that. We basically run another runtime, but more than this, when we tried to deploy it, we discovered that a lot of the deployment, like for instance of the dashboard, is basically Docker containers. So we said, well, actually we want to run it side by side. So we basically created another container which is called MOOCs, which basically support Docker and Unikernel side by side. So you basically can run them side by side. You can run only Unikernel. You can run only Docker containers. So it's basically all the option. And basically what we did is a runtime backend. So.
Okay, very good. Well, and so it's no secret that Kubernetes and its origins, its sort of genesis, are by and large from practices out of Google, and a lot of the code was initially coming from Google. There's been some statistics that were shown at one of the keynotes earlier about just the plethora of the vast and growing ecosystem, and to your point earlier, how quickly that momentum is gaining behind this particular container orchestrator is what I like to refer to it. I know some people say cluster manager, but we'll agree to disagree.
Okay.
I guess the question that I had was, in and around the notion that Google has kind of brought this forward. I understand too that there's now an announcement a second announcement that you guys are making as a project with respect to Google GCP. Yeah,
exactly. So until now, when we were running Unikernel, we basically support quite a lot of cloud. So we support AWS and we support vCenter if you want to run it on your data center, and Futon, which is the new version of the vCenter of VMware. We support it locally on VirtualBox and so on, but we never support Google Cloud. And basically we've been asked about it quite a lot, so we decided to add the support, and we just announced yesterday that basically today you can go to Unik and just run it on Google Cloud and it will work.
That's exciting. That's very
yeah, I think it is.
Fantastic. Well, do you I guess I continue to think about and wrap my little pea brain around the size and the really the small size of Unikernels themselves, and begin to think about where it is that this really gains traction with different use cases and different types of developers and things that they're trying to accomplish. Where are you finding that this resonates?
Yeah, so specifically I've been reached by a lot of the NFV words, so network function virtualization, a lot of telco companies, and the use case there is basically let's do a serverless kind of like integration with Unikernel. So today when you're running serverless, you're usually using container, and the way it's working, you're reusing container because the boot time is kind of like slow. With Unikernel, it's actually better because it's booting faster and it's also very secure. So that way you can actually put a function per Unikernel. And that's eating up very nicely in the NFV world. So a lot of company really into this model of I need to do a DNS server, so I will put up a Unikernel every time that someone asks for the question. I will answer it and then I will destroy it. So that's a use case that's been asked a lot.
That's very interesting. Yeah, no, and it sort of reminds me of OpenWhisk as a project to sort of facilitate the the use of serverless, or rather serverless use cases.
So we looked at OpenWhisk. We might going to work on this. We're still kind of like debating, but we are going to planning to open source another project, which is basically going to do exactly that. Basically, it's basically a serverless implementation with a backend for container, but also for Unikernel, and that way people can choose. So probably open source something soon.
Okay, yeah, that makes so. Stepping back, and maybe just for our listeners, as people have come to understand kind of serverless as a new thing, and kind of how that functions and works, maybe you could help by kind of comparing and contrasting, or helping people understand how Unikernels either like it's appropriate to think of unikernels and serverless kind of in the same context, or maybe that's appropriate but not necessarily always appropriate, or how do you?
Yeah. So the idea with serverless, and I'm sure everybody knows, it's the idea that I don't need a server that will be there and serve my API all the time, because I just need to do it if someone actually asks for it. And therefore, I basically can, there's no VMs running on the, there's no instances running on my infrastructure when I don't need it. So in terms of Unikernels, it's basically it's a process-based single process-based application, right? So you can put it online and it can be there all the time. But because it's really foot bad, so basically you don't have to. And the beauty of it is that you can actually use the serverless architecture and pop it up when you need, and then destroy it. So I feel that it's worked very well together with the serverless. It can work also as serverless full. It can be there all the time, Unikernel. But I feel that the feature of it, which is boot time, quick boot time, probably will work very, very nicely with serverless.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's almost back to one of our original topics was just a lot of the same things that benefits you get from containers, to an advanced degree. So I can see how unikernels fit right into that serverless world. So. Well, Idit, we are mostly through KubeCon. It's been great to chat with you again. This time I got a couple of questions in. I'll have to jab at Dr. Nick later for that. But thanks so much for being on the show with me. It's been great to have you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ken. I also just mentioned that please help us make it better. Unik is an open source. It's on our GitHub of EMC Advanced Dev. Go ahead, help us make it better. We really looking for pull requests and work as a community, and go and help us make it better.
The more the better, the more the merrier.
Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Idit.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thanks to Cisco for sponsoring our day of podcasting at KubeCon. We had some great conversations. Thanks again to Cisco. You can learn more about Cisco and their microservices platform at mantle.io. That's MANTL.io.